how they're going to pressure Substack to begin canceling people. Because it's not just that the left doesn't, I mean, what do I need to tell you, right? It's not that the left doesn't just want to see unpleasant speech. They don't even want you to have a mate, to have a platform, right? And we know this. What really made me mad about this was not seeing the left up to their old tricks, right? Oh, we're trying to censor people. Like, yeah, that's what they fucking do. They're parasites, right? Nor even seeing them discuss it openly. Because again, if the left had shame, they wouldn't be the left. When Glenn Greenwald talked about them depersoning Milo, there were a bunch of people replying to it and quote tweeting it saying, depersoning? What kind of stupid word is that? You think that when Twitter bans you, you stop being a person? What, are you addicted to the internet, Glenn? I didn't realize I became not a person when I got banned off Yahoo News when I was 13 years old. Anybody who does that shit, you have to block them immediately and on site and with extreme prejudice in Minecraft. Block them. These are the kinds of people that you shouldn't be associating with. Like, dear listener, you see me, you see the kind of enraged, unhinged person I am. How do you think I got this way? Right? Through jihad, through a ceaseless verbal struggle against these kinds of people. It has turned me into a monster, and I am trying to save you. I'm like,
he leads others to a treasure he cannot possess.
Yeah, I lead you to the treasure of, like, I want you all to have a worldview that is internally consistent and doesn't leave you surprised by the world around you. I want you to be able to make arguments that sway onlookers and discredit your opponents, like good argument. I want my people to have good arguments, and a good argument is one that makes their opponents look stupid. And I want you to have that so that audiences will come to your side rather than your opponent's side. But importantly, I want you to get all of these things without fucking going insane like me. It's too late for me. I've seen Cthulhu's face. My mind is being massaged by tentacles reaching out from the dark space beyond the stars. But it's not too late for you. Just do what I say and block. Just all you got to do is obey me without question. Don't talk to anybody that I say you shouldn't be talking to. Don't listen to arguments I say you shouldn't be listening to. And then you'll be a real dissident. All right? That's how you do it. Just listen, obey, and ignore people who disagree. And then you will be on the path to being correct about everything and a real free-thinking dissident like me.
A real hero and a real human being.
A real hero and a real human being. Okay, that's Substack. Beyond that, we have some time. So there were... Do you want to talk about, like, the Atlanta shooting and the other one?
Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so...
Can I just make a real serious point, though, actually, about the Atlanta shooting, and particularly about the other shooting?
We've already forgotten the place. That's how much it's already memory hold. I don't even remember where it was.
In wherever
it was in Colorado somewhere.
In Boulder.
Oh, Boulder.
We need to stop white on white violence in this country.
You know,
yes. It's an epidemic.
The crowd that was happy to tell you that Jesus Christ was a person of color is also really happy to let you know that Syrians are white.
So I know in Atlanta, it was 8 people? 8 Asian Americans.
It was 8 people, 6 Asian women, and then 2 white women.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was all Asian women. So
yeah, that's crazy, right?
So 6 Asian women and 2 others. And then in Boulder, Colorado, it was 8.
2 other Yakubian homunculi.
2 other people. In Boulder, it was 10 individuals. The important thing, though, is that we stop Asian hate in these times, you know?
Yeah, we got to stop Asian hate because the model minority myth is killing Asians. I'm going to explore that point in a second because the left has been pushing this meme of, like, anti-Asian hate, and more, like, absurdly, they've been pushing this idea that white people are behind it.
I thought Steven Crowder was going to get canceled for a video he did on that, where he would go through these headlines, and he would read the headline, and then he would say, oh, great, they have a link in this article, because they don't tell you anything about who, punched this old man in the back of the head. Let's click through the link. And then you click through the link. Oh my God, there's a video of it. Why didn't they put this in the article?
Yeah, and it's a black guy. And I just want to be clear, it's a black guy. On all these newsworthy incidents, it is a black guy. Right?
Yes, but we already know that the things that are done by certain people are the fault of other people who have agency.
Yeah, there was very recently one attack, which was a white guy. Okay, so there's one where it's like this white guy attacked some old Chinese lady with some kind of club. And then, of course, the Atlanta shooting. But fact is, and just so nobody calls me a pussy, yes, it was indeed blacks in almost all the other cases they've been pounding the drum on for the past, few weeks. And then the Atlanta shooting happens, and it's a white guy who kills a bunch of Asians who are doing who are all working at massage parlors. The guy is some kind of crazy Christian, evangelical purity thing who's grappling with like a sex addiction or whatever. And a lot of liberals are saying like, actually, there's no such thing as a sex addiction. It seemed real when Tiger Woods had it. It's weird. When Tiger Woods had it, sex addiction was real, and it was the conservatives at South Park who said that it was fake. But now that a white guy shoots a bunch of Asians who work at a massage parlor, and also 2 white girls who their lives don't matter, suddenly, actually, there's no such thing as sex addiction. There's an intersection of racism and sexism because white people think that all Asian women are prostitutes. That's the angle that they're going with.
Do you think it's hard for them to spin? It's actually very interesting how the human mind works, that if I give you something that does not fit your narrative at all, the cognitive dissonance powers of the brain take over, and in seconds, a reasonably intelligent person of sort of midwit status can do these mental gymnastics and come up with, here's how I get it to fit into my model of the world.
Yeah. And so the left finally has what Steve
And then
Saylor...
in the next second, when they don't need that, when all it requires is a simpler explanation because the new data fit their pattern easily, that big Rube Goldberg machine is just chucked out to make mental space. And there's never any conscious awareness of it.
And so the left finally has what Steve Saylor called their great white defendant. There have been a lot of strange complaints on the left about police. So one of them was the police chief when he was giving a summary of the event. At some point, he used the phrase, "the offender had a bad day." And they're like, can you believe...
They pulled that one right out of context. I heard that from people I work with saying they got totally fake news on it. They said apparently the way Vox or whoever on whoever shares
it was
news
Matt Iglesias.
People who share news on Snapchat spun it was the police chief in Atlanta said or dismissed and excused the murders by saying he had a bad day, everyone has bad days. And then my coworker ended this with saying that the police chief or the shooter or both look like a racist, and oh man, blah blah blah.
What does it mean to look like a racist?
I wasn't about to ask that question.
Actually, it's like, are you a racist? Why? It's like, well, it's just, you don't look racist.
That's a microaggression.
That's a microaggression, right? Yeah. And it's like, can you believe the police chief said that? And I was like, I actually don't believe that. Right? And dear listeners, you got to be willing to just say to people like, I don't believe that. That sounds crazy. When somebody tells you something insane, don't just be like, oh, maybe it was taken out of context. Oh, maybe let's wait for the facts to come out. Just look them straight in the eye and say, I don't fucking believe you. That sounds fake as fuck. Don't say that to me. I'm always right about everything. We do, as I said earlier, don't ever say that you don't believe me. You should believe me without question. But I mean, frankly, you've been listening to this podcast long enough to know that I am nothing if not an honest person, except when I'm telling jokes, in which case it doesn't count. But you should believe me without question. But generally, when somebody tells you something that's insane, like, hey, did you know the police chief think that the mass shooter just had a bad day? Like, I don't fucking believe you. I think you're a lying piece of shit or an idiot. Just tell them. Right? What? You want to be friends with somebody who talks like that? You want to preserve a positive relationship with somebody who believes that the police chiefs in minority cities are out here excusing white mass shooters as having bad days? Is that the kind of person you want in your life? Do you want to be like me? Do you know who has people like that in their life? Me.
The theme of this episode is, don't be like me. This is Marcel trying to scare everyone straight.
Yeah, this is a Scared Straight program. I'm going to visit. Okay. What I need to do is, I think there are no like conservative, like Montessori schools or whatever. But if there were, you bring me in as a motivational speaker, and instead of saying like, kids, don't do drugs, cocaine ruin your brain, please don't do cocaine, I'll be like, kids, today I'm going to talk to you about arguing with shitlibs and why you should never do it. Look at me, look at me. I had the whole world I had the whole world ahead of me. I'm a smart black guy. I come from a good family. I have conservative viewpoints. I had a long career ahead of me as a token from for some right-wing organization or another. I could have been working at like Heritage Foundation or whatever, telling people how bad communism was. And then my life got derailed when I was 16 and I argued with a class about whether or not taxation was theft. And then the thing is, it doesn't stop there, because once you start arguing with one student, then you argue with another one, and then it just keeps piling up. And then soon, even that wasn't enough. I started arguing with libertarians. I started arguing with libertarians about open borders.
You started getting into the harder stuff.
Yeah, into the harder stuff. My whole life was just. I started reading books by Austrian economists. All right, now look at me. Is that what you want? Don't argue with shitlibs, kids. It will ruin your fucking life. That's what I'm going to tell these kids.
What do you think your life would be like if you never had that argument?
Well, I'd probably still be a Democrat, actually. I'd be working at the United Nations.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's some Marcel deep lore. I actually, before I became a libertarian, I wanted to work at the United Nations because I've always been an anti-war person from when I was very young. I went on a field trip to the United Nations building, and in the main hall, they have this big photograph of this stone carving, and it's this peace treaty between the Egyptian Empire and the Hittite Empire from like 4,000 years ago. It is the world's oldest surviving peace treaty, right? And so I saw that. I'm like, I have to work here. This, only good things must happen in a magical place such as this. That's what I thought. Could you imagine if like my life had really gone in that direction? Yeah, right? I mean, like,
you wouldn't be a power lifter.
I certainly wouldn't. Yeah,
you'd be a soy boy UN person.
Yeah, I still think that a lot of conservatives are like really fucking stupid as far as the United Nations goes. I think that's like a topic for another episode, frankly. But I think a lot of conservatives have been baited into thinking like, oh, the United Nations is going to be the new world order, and the blue helmets are, Pakistani and Nigerian volunteers are going to come, and they're going to take my guns away, and they'll fantasize about like, shooting United Nations peacekeeping forces instead of like, the actual cops that are actually going to take their guns, or say the members of the National Guard that are actually going to take your guns and lock down the Capitol building to stop you from getting in. Right? It's like, oh man, the United Nations blue helmets. I sure can't wait to shoot them. Ha 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 ha. I'm a rebel. I can't wait to shoot at the United Nations peacekeepers. Did you know that the United Nations is anti-Semitic? Did you know that the United Nations rapes Haitian children? Did you know that Hillary Clinton and the United Nations are working together? I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Anyway.
Marcel stands the United Nations.
Right. I just can't bear to hear stupid shit. Right. And conservative hatred
of the United Nations. You come back for this podcast every time.
I know. Yeah. So conservative hatred of the United Nations really just drives me up the wall. I lose respect for people that do it. It's one thing to be like a libertarian, right? Like, who's allowed to criticize the United Nations? I was reading Reclaiming the American Right by Justin Raimondo. We recommended it last week. And last episode. And he has a section where he talks about how after World War II, the United States joined all these NGOs because it allowed us to go to war without congressional approval. So you join NATO, and then a country attacks a NATO country, and you don't need Congress to approve, you just go to war. And then he says the United Nations, if you look at it, is structured in a similar way. And in fact, this is how we went to war in Korea. It wasn't through a congressional act of war, it was the United Nations resolution. And Justin Raimondo is allowed to criticize the United Nations, right? I know Justin Raimondo wasn't, right, a complete idiot. He's dead. Right? I'm not saying he wasn't dumb and now he is. I'm saying he was smart before and now he's not alive, so he can't become right. But if it's like some fucking basic bitch Republican who's like, the United Nations, aren't libertarians supposed to hate big government? Don't you know that the United Nations is the biggest government of all because it's a one world government? And then I say, okay, what? Name some grievance you have with the United Nations. Like, did the United Nations like pass some gun control law or something? And they're like, and their complaints are usually one of two. It's either some stupid ass conspiracy theory about like kidnapping children. It will be something that is admittedly true or probably true about like peacekeepers abusing Haitians. And then it'll be like, oh, they are part of a worldwide anti-Semitic conspiracy. Right? It's like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, both Koreas, Japan. They're all in on this conspiracy to delegitimize our greatest ally in the Middle East by not letting them bulldoze, people's houses to make parks. Anyway,
Why do you love internationalist